We got over there as fast as we could. I was telling my husband if the people didn't start driving faster and getting out of my way, I was fixing to run, that they better not stop me from going in there, because I thought at first they might have police stopping people, but
Mhm.
I wasn't going to be kept out. You know, those were my kids.
Yeah.
Um, so we got about 5 or 6 car lengths from the beginning of their street, and there was a lot of cars over there. And I finally, because I kept telling my husband, I said, I'm fixing to jump out and run, but we've got to get to them. And so finally he said, just go, 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 run, just go. And so I jumped out and ran. I almost ran right by them. They lived at the end of the street, and they were actually sitting on the curb at the beginning of the street. There were some people, like some early responder, not with ambulances, but just people in general. There was a really nice young man that was trying to hold Lorelei because she was because of her shoulder, the way it was hurt. Somebody had bandaged her shoulder, and then somebody was bandaging Suzanne's head when I got there. Of course, they were all bloody. Sydney didn't really have. She really just had cuts and scrapes and bruises. She was the luckiest. I almost ran right by them because my thought was they were down at the house. But my daughter-in-law called out to me, and of course, then I saw them, and and immediately just plopped down, all the mud and the dirt and the rain, and started checking on them, and Suzanne kept trying to pass out. About by this time, my husband had just parked the car where it was and came up, and he said he was running down to to check on Bud to make sure just to see was he really dead or not. But of course, he got down there, and he was dead. Somebody had covered him up with a blanket. It was a blanket I'd bought him, like when he was 6 or 7 in Korea, when we lived in Korea. So there was no ambulances coming, and my daughter-in-law's cousin didn't live very far away. She only lived 5 or 6 miles away, so she got there just a few minutes after we did. By the time she got notified, and the towers were down over there too, of course, because the way it ripped through there wasn't very good cell phone service. So, but anyway, Kelly got there, and we decided there was no ambulances coming. Nobody was coming, and so we finally just decided to put him in Kelly's car and go to the hospital in Conway. And my husband got back up to us about the time we were going to get Suzanne in the car, and by this point she was having a hard time staying conscious because she did have a pretty bad head injury. He helped lift her and put her in the car, and of course he confirmed it, yeah, but he was actually dead. And he stayed with his body until the coroner could come in, so he was there for a few hours. But several of the guys from church, of course, because our niece was at a church function, word spread quick that what had happened. And so 3 of the guys from church came and sat with my husband. Even though they had to go to work the next day, they still came and sat with him while they waited with our son's body. And then he came up to the hospital just in time for me to give him Sydney, because she didn't have to be capped for anything, but Lorelei needed surgery. She had wood and debris hanging out of that wound in her shoulder, and they ended up just transporting her to Children's. So they wanted to take her without me. That wasn't going to happen. They weren't about to take the baby. She was 5, and I wasn't going to let them take her by herself. She just went through, basically pure hell. Anyway, they finally just said I could go with her in the ambulance, so I went with her to Children's, and then she had surgery about 4 in the morning, and they weren't able. She had a piece of her toe was just hanging there, but they weren't able to save it, so she lost part of a toe, and then their mom had to stay in the hospital for a couple of days. Lorelai got to come home with me later that afternoon, Monday afternoon, and then I kept them until Tuesday until the mom got out. But, so basically, my son was a hero because he gave his life in protection of his daughter. And then my daughter-in-law, she was a hero because she protected Sydney, and she got those girls out of there. And so I was pretty mad at God at first. I didn't understand why he had to take my son when he had so much going for him. I mean, they had that new house, and they had such a good life, but things happen.